stopped housing joint. So before we can cut the stopped housing joint, we're going to mark it out. And how we're going to mark it out is we're going to first of all measure in from each side exactly 15 millimeters. So I'm going to put my ruler on the end, I'm going to count in 15 millimeters and make a little tick at the 15 millimeters, nice and small. Once I've got the little mark there, I'm going to use my tri-square to draw a straight line at 90 degrees. I'm going to put my pencil on the little mark that I measured that's 15 millimeters in, slide the tri-square up till it touches the pencil, and I'm going to draw the line. Next thing I'm going to do is I am going to work out how wide the stopped housing joint needs to be. Now, according to the drawing, it's 16 millimeters, but it's unlikely my wood's going to be perfectly 16 millimeters, so I'm actually going to use the bit of wood that's going to go in the joint, and I'm going to line up just with my pencil line there really accurately, and then I'm going to make a little mark just to mark how wide the joint needs to be. Right, so just a little mark. Then I'm going to use my tri-square again, pop it on the mark, slide it up till it touches, draw the line. So that means that that's going to mark the exact width of the stopped housing joint. The next thing I will do on this side is I'm going to mark on the depth. So to mark on the depth, take my tri-square again, pop my pencil on the top of the line, slide it till it touches the pencil and draw a line down the way. Do the same on the other side. And then this is going to be a stopped housing joint that goes halfway through. So I've set my marking gauge to 9 millimeters. And I'm just going to mark the depth there, pop the pencil in, and darken up the line. Now, because this is a stopped housing joint, okay, I don't want this to go all the way through. I want it to stop, and I want to stop it 30 millimeters in from this edge. Okay, so the next bit I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to measure in 30 millimeters, make a little mark, and then I'm going to use my tri-square to mark where the joint's going to stop. And then to make sure I'm going to take out the right bit, I'm going to hatch off and I'm going to hatch off that little bit there. Next thing I'm going to do is we'll be doing this a lot now, knifing and notching. Take the craft knife, pop it in the line that we want to cut, slide the tri-square until it touches, and then I'm just going to make a light couple of passes to start with. And then once I've actually got a little bit of a groove, I can press a little bit harder. And we're looking for this to go in a couple of millimeters. Right? It's going to make sure cutting is going to be much easier. So I've got one knife there, and again pop the knife in the line, slide the tri-square up to it touches, draw it back gently to start with, and you build up until we've got a nice deep score, or a knife. Let's cut all the fibres of the wood, and we're going to get a really nice clean joint there. Once we've done that, to do the notching, there's just enough room for this to go into the vise. Keep it above the jaws so you don't damage them. Hold that in place. I'm going to get the 15mm chisel, nice and sharp, and again rest your hand down like this. Keep it at 45 degrees, about half the chisel in, and then we just lean forward and we're just using the chisel to remove a notch of the pine. And that's going to allow our saw to rest in that groove and make the cutting out a little bit easier. Got a tricky knot there. And then I'm going to do it from the other side. Next part of this is I'm going to have to create a little pocket in here, and that's going to be the stop of the stopped housing joint. It's 30mm in. To do that I'm going to use my chisel, but I want to make sure it gets down to the right depth. Now I've already marked the depth here with my marking gauge, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chisel and I'm going to line it up with how far I would like it to go down, and then I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to make a mark on the back of the chisel. See that? And then so that shows up a little bit better, I'm then just going to use a bit of masking tape and I'm going to put it on the chisel, and I know that when my chisel's down to the masking tape I'm the right depth. Right, to create the pocket I'm going to take my chisel, I'm going to make sure it's nice and vertical, I'm going to pop it in this line here, I'm going to give it a firm couple of taps in from one side, and then I'm going to turn it to the other side and line up, make sure it's nice and straight, nice and vertical. Another firm couple of taps. On this bit here where I want it to stop, this is in danger of splitting the wood. I'm just going to do a little gentle tap there. Much gentle on that bit. And then to remove this bit, I'm going to use my chisel and I'm just going to take a little bit out there. I'm tapping. Take that away, and then I'm going to use it from the other side. That's going to be removed. And again I'm going to put my chisel back in, keeping it nice and vertical. Another couple of confident hits in from both sides. A gentle tap into the top. And then use my chisel, and this pocket is getting a little bit deeper each time. My chisel into there. So I've been cutting this pocket with the chisel, and now you can see that my chisel goes all the way down and it's just to the right depth that I marked with my masking tape there. So I'm now going to stop that, and I'm going to use my tenon saw to cut the two grooves down the side. Then I'm going to use my chisel to remove most of the waste. Right, I've positioned this bit of wood now in the vise, and I'm making sure that when I'm going to cut down to the depth of the stopped housing joint I want, that the depth line is a couple of millimetres above the vise, so that when I use the saw and I cut it, I'm not going to cut my vise. Now this is a wee bit tricky to start with. Just getting the saw, my tenon saw, and I'm working it in the groove, and then I can hold on to the end of the blade there, and I'm just pushing down the end of the blade gently, moving it backwards and forwards. Looking at the back here to make sure I'm down at the right depth. And I'm just going to make sure that the saw is also down to the bottom of the pocket, so it's nice and level. So I think that's a reasonably good cut down there, and then I'm going to do the same thing again. So tenon saw in here. Press it down firmly. Looking at the back. Now the secret to this working is to make sure that the saw has went all the way through and it's completely level, so you've not actually cut it squint. So it's important the depth of the cut is all the way same all the way through. Almost finished. I'm going to take my bevel edge chisel, and not taking the whole lot out at a time, I'm just going to gently begin to remove the waste from the middle of the stopped housing. You shouldn't have to be hitting this too hard. Have a little look down there. I've got to keep forcing the chisel down to make sure it's doing the cutting. And that's looking reasonably level, so just keep on working my way down closer to the line. Now at the moment my saw cut hasn't went quite deep enough, so I'm just going to take my chisel and I'm just going to put it on the side, and I'm going to give it just a gentle tap just in the corner, all the way along there, and that's just to cut a a slightly deeper groove in the bottom. Before I use the chisel again, I'm going to turn it around this way. I'm just going to pare off the bottom. Nice and smooth. And then the last tool I'm going to use is I'm going to get something called a granny's tooth, which is just going to ensure that the bottom of my stopped housing joint is absolutely level all the way from the start to the finish. When we're using the granny's tooth, what we want to do is we're going to get that little bit of the blade there just in line with the line that the right depth. So I'm going to pop it on, and to set it, I'm going to loosen off this screw here, and if I turn it anti-clockwise, the tooth will go up, and if I turn it clockwise, the tooth will go down. So I'm just going to use this just to set it to the right depth. I'm going to lock it in place, and now that I'm happy with that, I'm going to take the chisel and pressing down firmly and moving it forward, and just using that to trim off the very and that's me finished off the stopped housing joint.